Hello, everyone. My name is Ebony Love. I'm going to give myself an introduction and then I'll introduce all of our wonderful speakers. You will not be hearing from me for the majority of this panel. I will hand it over to the phenomenal speakers that we have here today. I am Ebony Love. I am the immediate past chair of the Southern Region of the National Black Law Students Association, soon to be 2 years removed, thank goodness. But I also serve as a judicial law clerk in the Middle District of Florida, the Jacksonville Division. And after I finish my clerkship, I will be joining the service as a Navy JAG officer. And so thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to give brief bios of all of our speakers. And even though it's brief, I promise to share their full bios so that you can read about all of the amazing things that all of our panelists have done. And so to begin, with the Honorable Robert Wilkins. So Judge Wilkins was appointed to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit on January 15th, 2014. A native of Muncie, Indiana, he obtained his BS in chemical engineering from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology in 1986 and his law degree from Harvard Law School in 1989. Aside from his legal career, Judge Wilkins has played a key role in the establishment of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, serving as the chairman of the Site and Building Committee. Thank you, Judge Wilkins, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And next to the Honorable Victoria A. Roberts. Judge Victoria Roberts is a past president of the State Bar of Michigan, and she serves in the Eastern District of Michigan. She is recognized as an international teacher and lecturer on behalf of the Federal Judicial Center, the State Department, and the Department of Justice. Since 2001, Judge Roberts has run a program pairing minority law students with her colleagues as part of the Judicial Extern Program, or JEP. Judge Roberts began the JEP in 2000 in conjunction with the Wolverine Bar Association. In 20 years, more than 300 minority law students have benefited through their summer placements with federal judges. Thank you and welcome, Judge Roberts.
Thank you, Ebony.
And I don't know if he has joined yet. I know that he was having a little bit of technical difficulties, but I'll still give Judge Jones' bio. And then when he joins, you'll have his information. So Judge, on January 5th, 2011, Judge Jones was nominated by President Barack Obama to become a United States District Judge. Judge Jones was sworn in as a district judge on March 4th, 2011. He attended the University of Georgia and received his BBA in 1978 and his law degree in 1987. Judge Jones has offered his time and leadership to numerous academic, community, legal, and social organizations. At his alma mater, he is a managing trustee for the University of Georgia Foundation, a member of the University of Georgia Athletic Association Board, and vice president of the Russell Foundation. In addition, he is a past president of the University of Georgia's Alumni Association and the UGA chapter of the National Football Foundation College Hall of Fame. If he's here, welcome Judge Jones. If not, he will be joining us shortly. Dr. Campbell, you're next. Thank you and welcome. Dr. Campbell is a judicial clerk for the Honorable Thomas W. Sumners, Jr. of the Superior Court of New Jersey Appellate Division. Dr. Campbell is a 2021 graduate of Rutgers Law School. During law school, he was an Ella Baker intern at the Center for Constitutional Rights and a summer intern at the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. He is also a BALSA alumnus, serving as a local chapter president and as the Attorney General for the notable Northeast region. In 2015, Dr. Campbell earned his PhD in Afro-American Studies from the W.E.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Campbell. And last but certainly not least is Ms. Brianna Buckner. Ms. Buckner earned her Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice in 2015 and a Master of Public Administration in 2018 from Jacksonville State University. Originally from Detroit, Michigan, she received a full basketball scholarship to play for the Gamecocks. She graduated from Michigan Law in May 2021, and currently Brianna is a law clerk for the Honorable Bernice B. Donald of the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. And this fall, she will serve as a law clerk to the Honorable Robert L. Wilkins of the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Thank you so much, Ms. Buckner, for joining us as well. As I said, I'll drop all their bios in the chat. Promise, I will do it But to kick off our conversation and just to kind of ground everyone, we're having this conversation to see kind of what we can do to encourage Black law students to apply for federal clerkships and to discuss our paths to either the bench or to where we are as judicial law clerks. And with that, my first question, I'm kind of going to direct it more so towards the judges. What was your journey to the bench, and did it include a clerkship?
I can start. My journey did not include a clerkship, although I did try to become a law clerk. I applied in I graduated from law school in 1976. So I would have been trying to be a law clerk in 74, 75, and was not successful in my applications. I kind of limited myself to the Eastern District of Michigan because that's where I'm from and that's where I wanted to return to. But I found that the judges on this bench were not receptive to people who did not graduate from the top law schools. I did get a couple of interviews. They were polite, but I got turned down. So I spent my career practicing law in various venues with an insurance defense firm, a bond firm. I was with the U.S. Attorney's Office for a period of time. I ended my law career practicing with a plaintiff's personal injury firm where I was for about 10 years before I went on the bench. But I have to say that my experience trying to become a law clerk is part of what fueled the program that I started once I did become a federal judge.
So I did clerk for a U.S. District Court Judge, Earl Gillum, the first Black district court judge in the Southern District of California in San Diego, coming out of law school. I didn't know what a clerkship was before I entered law school because I didn't have any members of my family or anyone that I knew who were lawyers. But when I learned about what clerkships were, it did seem intriguing. I thought that it would be a way for me to learn from a judge and to be able to kind of get more of a sense of how the practical application of law and to see advocates. I really wanted to become a trial lawyer, and so I was more interested in clerking on a trial court for that reason. So I did that, and then I went to the Public Defender Service in Washington for 10 years and practiced there, doing both trial and appellate work. I took a couple of years to work full-time on the effort to create the National Museum of African American History and Culture for a nonprofit that I started with some friends. And then finding myself broke after a couple of years of that effort, I went to a big law firm in Washington and did civil litigation and including patent litigation and white collar defense work. And after about 9 years of that, I joined the district court bench, and 3 years later came to the Court of Appeals.
And so you've kind of already covered my next question, which was for the judges who did clerk before becoming a member of the bench, how did you secure your clerkship? And so I'm staying on you, Judge Wilkins. Can you kind of talk about how you were able to become a clerk? And you said California, but I don't remember the district.
The Southern District in Judge Gillum's chambers were in San Diego. You know, I asked around to some of my professor mentors to get a sense of if there were judges that they would recommend that I apply to. I availed myself of the services of our the law school's clerkship office, I cast my net somewhat wide in as far as I applied to different cities around the country, and I applied to some state courts as well as federal courts, and so I was lucky enough to secure an interview with Judge Gillum and get the clerkship, very fortunate. Looking back now, I realize how fortunate I was because, the competition for the positions um, is very strong competition.
And thank you for that explanation. I was just informed that we have some pre-law students in the chat and they don't know what a clerkship is. So let's try to ground this a little bit more. So what a clerkship is basically you are given usually it's a term, and usually it's a term of 1 year. It could be 1 or 2 years, where you actually work for a judge. So different judges give their clerks different responsibilities, but overall, generally what you're doing is doing research and writing and drafting for a judge and working in that capacity. And so we'll talk about the benefits of what a clerkship is, but that's a high level overview of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes if a judge does have different responsibilities, like chief judge of the district, they might have additional job duties for their clerks, but that's generally what a clerkship is. And so my next question is actually for Dr. Campbell and Ms. Buckner. What are the benefits that you received of being a judicial law clerk?
I imagine I'll go first right now. So thank you for the question and thank you for this invitation. So some of the benefits I think from being a law, one, I think the most concrete, which is you actually have a relationship with the judge, and that can take you quite far in terms of the opportunities you have, but more directly in terms of it helps you when it comes to your understanding of the law. I clerk for the appellate division in New Jersey, and since we're a court of general jurisdiction, we get all kinds of legal matters from property, whether it's a zoning board ordinance, to post-conviction relief petitions, looking at those cases. So we get everything. And sitting down with my judge, being able to talk to him about some of the legal issues before drafting my memos. If I'm stuck at a particular point of a memo, I'm 70 pages in, let's say, and it's a really complex legal issue, we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. And so being able to have that relationship with him to speak about very complex issues of the law is one of the benefits. And I think the second benefit is that, and it's related to the first point, is that after you leave the clerkship for your term, you have that relationship, and your judge, assuming that you've done well in your clerkship, will vouch for you. Your judge will go to bat for you when you're applying to jobs. When it comes to other opportunities, your judge may send you, for example, an email or write you a note telling you to look out for something. As a matter of fact, beginning in September, I'll be the Marvin M. Karpakin Fellow at the ACLU in New York. And I think my judge, just this clerkship, played an instrumental role in me going into this position because I have this experience working with so many complex legal issues. So those are some of the benefits of being a clerk, at least from my vantage point.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Dr. Campbell. I think one of the biggest benefits that I see, I mean, I think they're different depending on the level that you, whether it's the district court or the appellate court. But at the appellate court, I think one of the biggest benefits is, we go to law school and we read all of these cases and we talk through, Supreme Court decisions and how we think that they fit within a existing body of law and how we can change the law. And I feel like when you clerk, those are the same conversations that you're having, but you're kind of in the room where it happens. I hate to quote Hamilton, but it really is, a place where you and some of the world's brightest lawyers, my co-clerks and my mentors, the judges, we get to talk about kind of the puzzle pieces and where each case fits into that existing body of law and the lens in which we should approach these really, really complex issues. And so really just to hammer down on the point that Dr. Campbell made is that you have an opportunity to have mentorship from the world's brightest legal minds And you get to do it as a baby lawyer, which is really amazing. So, yeah.
And so now for the judges, what do you believe the benefit is that you provide to your law clerks when they do join your chambers?
Judge Roberts, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Judge Wilkins. I think that certainly the longer that a judge is on the bench, I think in developing that experience as a judicial officer, the more we have to offer to our law clerks. There are things that we just know intuitively. And I didn't know things intuitively when I came on the bench. I was on the other side of the bench practicing law, but things will just sort of gel and mesh. And so I think that the mentorship that people have talked about is something that we certainly do offer them. We offer them exposure to other lawyers. We can provide introductions to other lawyers during the course of the clerkship, for example. I think that a lot of law students come to us as clerks and they don't really know what area of practice they want to be in. And that's fine. A lot of people don't know what area of practice they want to be in when they're 20 years into it, but certainly right out of law school. And so because we are courts of general jurisdiction, we never know what kind of case is going to walk through the door. And the clerks can develop areas of interest just from the types of cases that they work on. For example, I had one law clerk who had no exposure to intellectual property cases. I don't even think she had taken intellectual property in law school. But for some reason during her clerkship, we just had a rash of trademark cases and she loved them and she wanted me to send them to her. And so I did do that. And when she ended her clerkship, she was able to join an IP firm and she's now a partner in that IP firm. So that's just an example of how we can help launch the careers of the people who are our law clerks.
Yes, I agree with all of that. I mean, being a law clerk helped me when I was clerking learn how to get to the heart of the matter, because that's a lot of what the judge expects the law clerk to do. If there's a stack of briefs and there's 6 arguments that are made, get to the heart of those 6 arguments and figure out do the cases really support these arguments, and what are the strengths and weaknesses, what are the key factual disputes, how should we read this precedent, and you have to learn how to articulate that in writing, and either in a memo for the judge or helping the judge draft an opinion with the ruling in the case. So you really work on your writing, you work on, writing on deadline, which is important. You hone your research skills because you may get briefs, but my clerks are always instructed to do their own research because oftentimes the lawyers miss cases. And so all of those things will help you become a better advocate, because you will now kind of, having seen how the sausage is made, you will now know how to brief and argue your case, how to develop the facts, and how to really present yourself, both orally and in writing.
Thank you so much for that insight. And I have been informed that Judge Jones has joined us. And so thank you, Judge Jones, for joining us. And you actually joined us right in time because I'm going to switch a little bit. For everyone who has spoken so far, except for Dr. Campbell, we are all in the federal level. So whether it's the Court of Appeals or the district court level, we've all been talking about those kind of clerkships. But I did want to speak a little bit about state court clerkships. And so before I go to Dr. Campbell, I wanted to ask Judge Jones, not Justice, Judge Jones, do you see any benefits or any differences from the clerks that you hired as a state court judge and from a federal court judge? Is Judge Jones here? If not, then Dr. Campbell, can you explain a little bit of what you do on the state level and like kind of talk about your day-to-day research writing, what your job duties entail?
Okay, so I'll start with the second question first. So the day-to-day, we're actually about to hit a recess right now, but the day-to-day typically looks like I'm in, my co-clerk and I, and what typically happens is we have a stack of case files, and those case files may have a whole bunch of transcripts, briefs, reply briefs, all kinds of things. And we have a deadline. Typically, we have a week to do a memo, and the stack of documents can be voluminous. And so we work through that, we write our memos, but in writing our memos, there are times when our judge will send us an opinion, and we'll have to stop our memo. And typically our judge, he wants a 24-hour turnaround when it comes to the opinions. And the opinions can range anywhere from, let's say, 10 pages to about 50, 55 pages. And so we have to make sure that it's faithful to the records. We have to check the record. We have to make sure the cases are cited properly, make sure the cases stand for what they stand for, and that what the judge is articulating is exactly what's in those cases. And we also have to do some grammatical things as well. So it gets very detailed, and we have to do that along with, let's say, the extensive memo that we have to do that's due every Friday. And so the larger picture in all of this is, because we get so many different kinds of cases, most of the time we're not putting together opinions that are going to be published. So they're only applicable to the parties involved. But every so often we will publish a case. And so we begin to have conversations about what it means for this case to be a part of New Jersey precedent, assuming that the Supreme Court doesn't overturn it or remand it or do something else with it. And so these are the kind of conversations we have, but typically it's a grind. And that's something I really want to emphasize. It's very much a grind when it comes to doing these kinds of clerkships, but it really trains you to be an effective legal advocate by at least increasing your threshold in order to do the kind of work you want to do.
And I actually see Judge Jones now. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And so earlier I had asked this question, and I guess I can pose it again, just shorter. We wanted to know, since you've served on both the state and the federal level, we wanted to know what you look for in clerks at each level and whether there's a difference in the job duties that they do.
Well, thank you. And I apologize for coming in late. I had some computer problems. I think I served as a state Superior Court judge in the state of Georgia for 16 years. It's the trial court for the state of Georgia. You try more cases, and a law clerk has an opportunity to be involved in more jury trial cases, I think, in the state court. As a Superior Court judge, I would try 20 to 25 jury trial cases a year. Probably half of those, 15 of those were probably criminal and probably 10 civil. And the law clerk has to be prepared to make, with the judge, very quick decisions during the course of a trial and the preparation of the motions in limine. You may have an average civil case or criminal case as many as 8 to 10 motion limines that you have to get prepared for in the state court. And that prepares the individual. As your thing about thinking fast on your feet, well, thinking fast in the courtroom becomes part of it. Looking at it from a federal point of view, the complexity of the case is a little bit different, and therefore you're not dealing with as many cases. But I think preparation for someone that comes out of law school and starts as a law clerk in the state courts prepares them for a lot of different variety of cases. You have a lot of civil and criminal cases, but you also have the domestic cases in the state courts. And sometimes they're some of the most exciting things, and sometimes they make a difference in people's lives when you're talking about custody and matters of that nature. So I think it benefits a person to be a law clerk in state court because you see a wide variety of cases.
Thank you so much, Judge Jones. And the next question I'll pose first to Judge Roberts, and then anyone else, if you would like to chime in, please do. Do you see any benefits for lawyers who clerk before or during private practice? Do any of the skills that they learn as a clerk translate into becoming a great big law firm attorney or anything like that?
Absolutely. And what we find is that the law firms will pay a premium sometimes for people who have clerked for a federal judge. And I want to emphasize that I know that the pool of money is great, and people come out of law school with tremendous debt, and they want to get into the law firms where they're going to make a lot of money. And that makes so much sense to me. But I think that a lot of people need to maybe push the pause button on that and realize that the 1 year or 2 year clerkship is going to give them so much experience that they're not able to get in that first or second year at a law firm. They're going to be able to hone their research and writing skills. They're going to be right on the front line making decisions. They're going, at least at the trial court level, they will be seeing how a trial unfolds on the other side of the bench. And law firms find value in that. They want people who have experienced it on the other side. They bring them in. They believe that they have insight into the judge's habits, all of the judges on the bench, even though they may have only clerked for one. It is something that has value to them. And so these law firms will also, if you're able to secure a job with a law firm, many of them will postpone your start for a year or two if they know that you have a clerkship because it has so much value to them, and they will pay you for that delay. And so I would just encourage people to think about clerkships if it's something that you haven't done already. If you do have a job with a law firm lined up, to ask them if they could postpone, if you do have an opportunity to work for a judge, because it's just priceless. It's priceless experience that you can't get in another venue right out of law school.
I can tell one quick story of the value of a clerkship that I heard from lawyers who were practicing at a big firm, and they had a civil trial. And so there were, 1 or 2 partners and a couple of associates on the case. And, they got a verdict that went against them in the case. And, of course, they were disappointed with that. But the junior associate who had clerked, nudged the partner and said, ask for the jury to be polled. And a poll was done, and it turned out that one of the jurors expressed some reservation, and they were sent back to deliberate further. And I believe that it ended up being a hung jury. So the clerk, having had the experience of being in the courtroom, had the wherewithal and the insight to ask for a poll, and it literally made the difference between losing and not losing a case. So that's kind of an extreme example, but there are lots of examples of where clerks have gained practical knowledge that others who haven't had that experience in and around the courtroom don't have that specific knowledge.
Ebony, can I add one point? All judges don't hire people right out of law school. There are a number of judges who prefer to get someone who's had some experience at a law firm or with a government agency. And again, because the law firm or the agency may find such value in the clerkship, they will allow people to leave and go and do a clerkship and come back to the law firm. So I've done both. I've hired people right out of law school. I've hired people who have that practical experience. And so if my message, I guess, is to the students is that even if you don't get a clerkship coming right out of law school, and it's something that you want to do, and you end up practicing someplace else, come back, circle back to judges, and you may find that they will hire you because they prefer someone who's had some experience.
I've had two law clerks that went and worked for one of the largest law firms in Atlanta. And after 2 years, both law firms allowed the clerks to leave and come back and clerk for me. In fact, one of the law clerks I have there in my office, she interned for me when she was in law school at University of Georgia. She took a job at one of the largest law firms in Atlanta, Georgia. She worked with them for 2 years, and then they allowed her last year to leave, come clerk for me, and then once she finishes, they will allow her to come back and assume her role in their law firm, probably at a higher salary than when she originally left. Another individual about 4 years ago was given the same opportunity. He was with a law firm. They allowed him to leave the law firm, come clerk for me for 2 years, and then return to their law firm. It's the knowledge that law firms want to have about how the judge's office functions, but not just the judge's office. I think someone mentioned how all the judges or how the Northern District of Georgia procedures are done. There's something called in March and September of each year, district court judges find themselves trying to finish up what is called a 6-month list or a 3-year list of cases. And I had one law clerk inform me that worked for one of the law firms in Atlanta called Jones Day. He informed them in March, he says, well, if you have a case now, and if your case is now on that 6-month list or that 3-year list, you're probably going to have to wait a while. It's that inside knowledge that law firms want. They want to know, why does Judge Jones proceed this way in these type of cases? What is he looking for in a summary judgment? That law clerk works for you for 2 years, and just all my law clerks do 2-year term, the term law clerks. They have that knowledge, and that is what law firms will hire you for unless they want, and they will allow you to come work for them and return to be a law clerk and then come back to the law firm.
Thank you so much. And so kind of everybody's collective feedback gave me our next question. So I didn't say this earlier, but I have clerk/intern/extern in all levels. So my last semester of law school, I was with the Chief Justice of the Florida Supreme Court. During my 1L summer, I was an intern for a magistrate judge in the Middle District of Florida. So I've done Supreme Court of Florida, magistrate, and then now district court judge. And so my question is, should people who are aspiring for law clerk placements post-graduation, should they look for those kind of internships and externships? I'll start with Ms. Buckner and Dr. Campbell to see whether y'all did those kind of intern and externships during law school. And then for the judges, starting with Judge Roberts, do you look for clerks who have those kind of prior experiences?
Go ahead. Okay. I did do a judicial externship and an internship in law school, and that is actually what I didn't know anything about clerking before law school. Was in the chambers of the chief magistrate judge in Tennessee. And we just had those type of robust conversations about what clerking is and what they would expect out of judges expect out of clerks and the type of work that you'd be doing at each level. And that summer, I had an opportunity to see different levels of advocacy. I went and I was super curious, would sit in jury trials all day. Had an opportunity to sit in on probation hearings and sentencing hearings. Got a chance to see some naturalization ceremonies and just really fell in love during that summer. And at the end of the summer, I had an opportunity to attend a conference in The rest was kind of history from there. And so if you do have an opportunity to intern, spend a summer in a judge's chambers, or spend a semester in a judge's chambers, I think that you'll see that you will have a phenomenal experience, whether that be getting a chance to learn from and work with the clerks in the building, or having an opportunity to, again, just get that mentorship, work on your research and your writing. I think that that is a huge proponent of it. I had an opportunity to work on a part of one of the opinions my 1L year, and just was blown away with how much that little time helped me to work on my research and writing. So absolutely, yes, you should do an internship or externship. I think you will not regret your decision.
Absolutely. To piggyback on that, I did not do that, but I already had a previous relationship with my judge, and it was understood that upon graduation, I would clerk for him. Prior to me going to law school, I was a literature professor, and I remember speaking with him, and he said, I don't feel like I'm a good writer, and okay. And so one, he's a brilliant writer. He's lying on himself. But two, it was just really cool to be able to create the kind of relationship with him prior to that. And that's something I would encourage all the students here. There are a number of events that take place at your law school, nearby events, whether it's bar associations. Get an opportunity to use those opportunities to learn about the judges and the people who are practicing, so they can actually put you in touch with a judge if you don't have an opportunity to meet with a judge. And so working with my judge in particular, I'm considered the grammar whiz, and my other clerk is considered the blue book whiz. So we kind of bounce off one another and use each other to kind of make the opinions come to life a bit more. And so I say all this to really emphasize the point that certainly, as Ms. Buckner mentioned, do the internships and the externships, and you have an opportunity to do so with the judge, but also use the other available networks to get to know judges, so you can put your name in the hat so that they can actually consider you when you decide to apply for them.
I would say, Ebony, that not having interned is it's not a disqualifier for me, but it is helpful, and it's helpful because I think the type of writing that students are exposed to in law school is not the type of writing that is going to make a good judge or make a good opinion. And a lot of people come in and they think they're fabulous writers, and they are quickly discouraged of that because they find out they have to write a different way. You have to write neutrally, and you have to consider, everything in putting together an opinion. And people, I think, just don't often realize that judges only speak through their opinions. I can't do a podcast. I can't give an interview to anybody. I speak through my opinion. And so that is so important to me to get it right, and so important to everybody else to get it right. And law school legal writing just doesn't train people to write for a judge. And the advice, a piece of advice that I often give is that if you do want to clerk for a judge, you need to try to attach yourself to a professor at law school who maybe did do a clerkship, and do an independent study with that clerk, so that you could at least get exposed to the type of legal writing that is going to make you valuable for a judge. So if I have interns who have had the opportunity to really draft an opinion, then they get it. They know, they come in already humbled by that experience. And the people who haven't had that exposure realize quickly that it's the learning curve, the writing curve is steep, and you've got to be able to adapt pretty quickly.
Judges Jones and Wilkins, did you have any insight on that question?
I have 3 law clerks in my office. 2 of those law clerks intern for me. My career law clerk interned for me, and another law clerk I have to start this year, she interned for me. What you're looking for, or what I looked at when they were in my office, is that they have the ability to write the way I need to learn how to write, or not they fit into my chambers. You could be a great academic person, but what I'm looking for is someone that can fit my chambers and function in my chambers. The interning gives you a chance to get involved directly with the judge, but also for the judge to see things about you. I receive over 200 applications or resumes a year for clerkships. And it's that certain advantage that being an intern will help you, not only with that judge, but with other judges in the building. Also, it also helps you develop skills that will help you become a better lawyer.
I agree with everything that's been said. I think that one thing that is important is having recommenders who can really speak in detail about your abilities. A lot of times professors can give you a good recommendation, but their recommendation consists mainly of, how did you perform in class when you were called upon, and how did you perform, on an examination. But if you weren't a research assistant for them or a teaching assistant for them, they really can't say much more than that. And those recommendations are helpful, but they're not as helpful as a recommendation if you were a research assistant for them and you had to draft, memoranda for them or help them write a part of an article or something and perform research. And so if you are an extern or an intern, you can get that sort of a detailed recommendation from the law clerks who you worked with or from the judge who you worked with. And so that can be very helpful to you.
Thank you. And I know Judge Roberts, you have to go.
Yeah, I do have to go because of another commitment I made before agreeing to do this panel, but I wanted to just co-sign something that Judge Jones said there. He has hired interns, people who he trained, and now they are his law clerks. There are some judges who won't do that. They have interns, externs, and then they just have a policy not of hiring them. But I do much of what Judge Jones does. I bring in interns. I'm looking at them for the possibility of hiring them as law clerks. And so I'm very hands-on with them. I don't put them under the training of my senior law clerk. I try to read their drafts. I try to do all of the editing. And it could be training camp for becoming a law clerk. And so just another piece of advice to everyone who's online, if you don't know that you want to be a law clerk, but you have the opportunity to be an intern, and maybe you should do that, and maybe you will get with a judge who does regard it as the minor leagues, as training camp, and will consider you for a law clerk position in the future. So I want to thank you very much for this invitation, and I do have to sign off, but good luck to everybody. And Ebony and everyone will know how to get in touch with me if you have any questions. Okay.
Thank you so much, Judge.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye. Okay. So switching gears just a little bit, I wanted to see from the law clerks' perspectives and also from the judges' perspectives, starting with the law clerks and then moving to the judges. If you've clerked, I don't remember if Judge Jones, you've clerked before becoming a judge, but okay. Okay, so for the law clerks and for Judge Wilkins, when you were searching for clerkships, did you apply in specific areas? For example, I know someone who only applied in the Southeast, specifically in courts in the 11th Circuit. I know someone else who approached the application process by only applying to Black judges. So do you look in specific areas, or do you look for specific judges? How did the clerk application process look for you?
For me, as I mentioned earlier, I was very intentional about working with my judge upon graduation. And one of the benefits of that was that and this also circles back to the internship or externship question, is that sometimes it's hard to build that relationship with a judge, or it doesn't have to be hard, but it can be at times if you don't already have that relationship with a judge. And so when you're an intern, when you've built a relationship with a judge, it's almost an easier fit once you go into the position. However, going after my time at the National ACLU, let me just back up and say my judge is Black, and I was very intentional about wanting to work with a Black judge, because I think that there are conversations that we have had and conversations that we will have that are unique to our experiences in terms of how to navigate the legal profession. Similarly, after my time at the National ACLU this coming up year, I'm going to be looking at Black federal judges to work for, because again, I think having that experience and having those conversations with Black legal practitioners builds that kind of comfort going into a profession that still today doesn't represent us extensively.
Yeah, I think there is no right answer to this. So I'll just speak to kind of my experience. But I think because the relationship between judges and their law clerks is a very intimate space, and we're having a lot of difficult conversations. For me, my process, I was very intentional about the judges, but also on the opposite end, also very intentional about presenting myself in the most authentic way, because I think that as part of the application process, you might have restrictions as to, geography and, the type of work that you want to do. But it really is about finding someone who you feel like you'll have the best experience, and they will help to mentor you and help you to become the best version of a lawyer that you can be in that little short amount of time. And so, another point that I think we highlighted a little bit earlier was that you are joining a clerkship family. And so, you basically are signing up to have this long-standing relationship with not only the judge, but the clerks that they've hired and your co-clerks. And so, that time and that decision really is not only just for 1 year, but it's a lifetime decision. So.
Yeah, when I was applying for clerkships, it was so many years ago, I can't remember the details, but I do remember that I applied mainly to Black judges, but not exclusively. I applied to different parts of the country, and I applied to mainly U.S. district judges, but also to some state court judges as well. So, I wanted to cast a wide enough net that I would hope to, increase my odds of obtaining an interview and hopefully a clerkship with one of those. And, I didn't have family or other commitments that, tied me to a particular area. So I was able to do that. I mean, I knew I wanted to go to Washington, D.C. eventually, but as far as being able to spend a year somewhere as a clerk, I felt like, I could really do that anywhere.
And so my second to last question for everyone, because I know that our time is running short, is, and I'll start with, I don't know what just happened, sorry. I'll start with Judge Jones, but what does your day-to-day in chambers look like?
Working very from a law clerk. The clerk can start the day off or start the week off, and they their desk with their computer, researching and drafting memos, drafting orders for me, or they can find themselves in a preliminary injunction hearing trying to determine whether the state of Georgia's primary election should be stopped and the redistricting map should be found unconstitutional, or they can find themselves in a jury trial, have to be preparing charges for a case and we can try for 2 or 3 weeks, or they could very easily be in a staff meeting discussing how we're going to prepare for the next set of motions for summary judgment coming up. The beauty of being a law clerk in a district court is that you very seldom have a day or a week that's a routine, because there's so many different things you have to do as a law clerk with that particular judge from cases that's been assigned, that again, you can go from sitting one day at your desk all day drafting memos and researching, or you can find yourself sitting in the courtroom judge for 2 or 3 weeks trying a case or in a preliminary injunction matter. So the day-to-day function and the variety of what you see, I think, really makes it enjoyable and exciting being a law clerk.
And it's also what makes me miss being a district court judge, Judge Jones, because life on the Court of Appeals is much more kind of routine. You're preparing for argument. And so my clerks, read the briefs and prepare bench memos for me on all the cases that were being argued. They're also preparing drafts of opinions. Every once in a while, I'm on the motions panel doing emergency issues, what might be bail appeals or appeals of injunctions or stay motions, et cetera. And so there's some variety there, but on the Court of Appeals, it's more just reading briefs and preparing memoranda and draft opinions and helping the judge be prepared for oral argument and to think through the issues in the case and how to strategize and convince the other panel members to come along the way that I would like for them to come along, because on the Court of Appeals, I have no power by myself. I have to get at least one of the other 2 panel members to agree with me. So that's also kind of part of what the clerk helps me think through.
Ms. Buckner and Dr. Campbell, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of what Judge Wilkins talked about, bench memos, and we have en banc rehearings that will type up memos for the judge. But I kind of want to highlight, while we have that work, that's why I think it's so important to look at who you apply to, like look at the judge when you're applying. Because a lot of the judges are involved in extracurricular things that you may have the opportunity to be involved in. I know that Judge Donald speaks a lot about implicit bias across the country, and I've had an opportunity to be involved in a lot of her lectures and helping her prepare and attending some of those lectures. And so, I think that that is kind of like the interesting piece that gets you away from some of the bench memos and opinion writing that you'll have an opportunity to be involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to what Judge Wilkins said, the day-to-day we come in, start working on bench memos. There's some emergent duty stuff that we have to do. We prepare for oral arguments. We help draft the opinions that come out. And as I said, it's very much a grind. As I said earlier, it can be difficult at times, especially when the memos are back to back to back and the legal issues become more and more complex. But at the same time, there's some really great training that comes with it. There have been times where I've had to pull a 18-hour, 20-hour, 24-hour day just to kind of think through some of the issues. But when you really get engrossed in some of what the parties are dealing with, and when you realize that there are real lives that are being affected, it really motivates you. I'll say this final thing about it. When I was an intern, when I was an Eagleton Fellow through Rutgers University, I was an intern in the Division on Civil Rights, and the head, Rachel Apter, she clerked for the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she had been nominated to the New Jersey Supreme Court, and we had a conversation. And I asked her, I was like, what do you think, you have a background in civil rights law. She was at the ACLU. And I asked her, I said, what do you think your jurisprudence would look like? And she said, because I'm interested in practicing civil rights. And she said, you would be surprised, but there are many cases that don't necessarily look like civil rights cases, but they are civil rights cases. And so it's about having a more expansive view of how these cases affect the lives of the individuals who are beyond the piece of paper, who are beyond the case files that you get.
And so before we get into our last question, I did want to give my kind of perspective. So again, I'm on the trial court level, I'm not appellate anything right now. Coming from the Florida Supreme Court into this clerkship, there is a lot of differences that I see. So at the district court level, we get a lot of pro se litigants. And so we have to deal with that a little bit more, and we get a lot of emergency motions. And so it's a little bit different on the district court level when you have those kind of, you're working on something on the 6-month or 3-year list, but then you have to turn around and deal with the emergency motions that come in, and also your day-to-day going through the daily filings. Like literally every day we print out the filings that have come the day before, and we review everything that was filed to see whether anything has a something that needs to be dealt with that day. And so you do deal with a lot of different areas of law. I wouldn't say that I go to work and I'm like, oh, I'm working on this one case and that's all I'm going to work on today. You will probably most likely be working on at least 3 or 4 cases at the same time. And so you're working on all these different areas. From 9 to 10, you might be working on a qualified immunity issue. From 11 to 3, you might be working on an intellectual property issue. And then from 3 to 5, you might be working on a custody issue. I don't know. But the beauty of it is you're working 9 to 5. And so just want to throw that out there, because I did go graduated law school, did private, and then I went to clerk. And so the difference between working at a big firm and working at a clerkship, I love the hours. And so for our last question, for all of the panelists, I'll start with Judge Jones, then Judge Wilkins, and then Ms. Buckner and Dr. Campbell. My last question is, if you could give any piece of advice to aspiring lawyers, what would it be? It does not have to be related to clerkships. It can be literally any piece of advice that you would like to leave for the students.
What I would tell the students is, do not allow people to place limitations on you, and don't place limitations on yourself. Everybody that's participating in this program today have been in situations where someone tried to tell them what they could not do, what they could not accomplish. And they would not be in the position they are today if they listen. You have to believe that if you work hard, and it takes hard work, because when you get out of law school, it's a lot of smart people. It's the person who's willing to work hard. But you also have to have that attitude of not placing limitations on yourself, on what you can, what you can't accomplish. You first of all have to be willing to work for what you're trying to accomplish. But don't allow people tell you what you can't do. So my motto in life has always been, I'm not going to allow other people to place limitations on me, nor will I place limitations on myself.
That's great advice. I would say that my advice to you is to really don't worry about whether you have it all figured out, and don't burn any bridges. At every opportunity you can, build bridges. So, when I was in law school, I didn't think that I was really going to harken back to my engineering degree undergrad and never do intellectual property work. I actually also didn't think that I'd ever work for a law firm. I wanted to do public interest work and civil rights work and be a public defender. But over the course of my career, I did all of those things. So never say never. And as far as the building bridges, you're going to meet a lot of amazing people in law school, and a lot of amazing professors. Try to meet and interact and fellowship and become friends or colleagues with as many of them as possible, because they're your network, and you can help them and they can help you. And over the course of my career, there's been kind of no job that I've ever gotten or no project that I've undertaken where I haven't had help from friends, from former jobs or from law school. And so just keep that in mind. Be a good friend, good colleague to others, and they will be to you, and you can help each other.
So I have two. The first is, if you are interested in clerkships, there is an amazing program called the Appellate Project, and it focuses on those who are law students of color who are aspiring to be appellate clerks. And they have a flagship mentorship program that I was a part of last year that was exceptional. They pair up law students with Supreme Court advocates. And that program really was a game changer for me as far as building a network within the appellate field and with great practitioners. And the second piece of advice would be to, similar to Judge Jones' point, abandon your tendency to deselect. I think you have to be secure and know that you can make and will make meaningful contributions, whether that be at a law firm or in your clerkship to the judge or boardrooms or nonprofits, whatever it is. You just have to be resilient enough to use those talents.
Amazing advice. Absolutely. So one, this doesn't sound like an exaggeration, but an email can change your life. So if you want to pursue something, shoot somebody an email. If you want to get to know a professor better, to actually build that relationship, shoot the professor an email. I got into law school because I sent the professor an email. And that has been a lifelong, what I believe will be a lifelong relationship I have with that professor. And she was the reason, I got to shout out Rutgers, Professor Elise Body, who was the litigation director at one point at the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. She has changed my life literally, and that relationship I hold very dear. So shoot an email to folks you aspire to be like. The second bit of advice is, work hard. I think that goes without saying, but every opportunity you have, work really hard. When I was at the Center for Constitutional Rights, when I was at LDF, it was always my mentality to try to just do better and better each day. And then finally, take care of yourself. These things are, doing this kind of work is not easy. And especially as Black law students, as Black attorneys, it's doubly hard because oftentimes we're viewed as not deserving to be in the room. And so you really got to take care of yourself, find your community, allow that community to support you, and get the support that you need when you need it. And I'll add this last bit of advice. Like, I know this is number 4. Truly, just, do your best to just connect with the people who are really interested in the work that you want to do. Some of us don't have it figured out, but if there's a certain kind of practice you want to pursue it hard, contact people who are doing that work. They'll certainly look out for you. Thanks so much.
Thank you to all the panelists. Before we go, I did want to give my own piece of advice. So the reason why I contacted Bami about creating this panel in the first place is because I am the only Black law clerk in my courthouse. And that to me is just unacceptable. And so I would like to see more of us pursuing these positions, because also in my courthouse, there has never been a Black woman magistrate or district court judge. And I just think that we are past the point where we need to have that kind of representation, not just to tick off a box, but because we are phenomenal advocates. And so I did not have my clerkship until I started studying for the bar exam. And so that's not typical. I got mine a little bit late, but never accept no for an answer. If you want to clerk, keep looking for those opportunities. I was fully prepared to go do my JAG service and then come back and clerk, but a door opened and I was able to take it and then defer my JAG start date. So if you have a dream, if you want to be a judge one day, if you want to be a clerk one day, don't give up on it. Don't take no for an answer. No might come immediately. You might need to delay your start date, but that is totally fine. Even if you work in private practice for 2-3 years and then you become a clerk, it's still worth it. So please consider doing a clerkship. And if you still don't believe me after what I've just said, think about soon to be Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. She started her career as a clerk. And so just think about the ways and the judges that you look up to, think about the lawyers you look up to, and think about ways that you can follow in their footsteps. And with that, thank you all so much for attending. Thank you to the panelists for giving up your Saturday evening. I think we're all on the East Coast, so it is 6:42, and I know that you're ready for dinner. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the attendees, and y'all have a great night.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being with you all. Take care.
Thanks a lot to everyone.
Take care of yourself. Be safe.